As sweat drips down his brow and exhaustion saps his strength, Andy Swanger's close to giving up his search on a Utah trail. And who can blame him? Is buried treasure really worth all this hassle? But before he throws down his shovel for the day, something finally catches his eye. Man unearthed an old box in the woods, only to gasp when he opened it. It was a scene that could have been ripped straight from the pages of Treasure Island, yet there wasn't a pirate in sight. We know what you're thinking now, though. What was this all about, then? Why were people on the lookout for a random chest in Utah? Well, to answer that, we first need to introduce you to two local guys. David Klein and John Maxim were the men behind this idea. And it all stemmed from a good-natured place back in 2020, as people continued to suffer through the pandemic in Utah. To go into more detail on that front, David spoke to Fox News in the summer of 2021. David said, "We just kind of sensed that morale was down as a community just because everyone had been locked in for everything for a long time. And so we were like, man, what would be a safe, fun way to get people outside? And we just kind of thought, what about a treasure hunt?" On that note, David and John set the inaugural Utah treasure hunt in motion. The duo placed $5,000 inside a chest and took it up a mountainous trail during the summer of 2020. From there, they dropped the box into a freshly dug hole before alerting the locals that the search could begin. But did the treasure hunters have any clues to go on? It would have been like looking for a needle in a giant haystack without something to work with, after all. Well, John and David realized that too, so they decided to write up a cryptic poem that ultimately doubled as a map. Pretty clever, right? Mind you, to say that David and John were skeptical of what would come next is a major understatement. As the former wrote on the Utah Treasure Hunt's website, on the way down the trail, after hiding the chest, we joked that in a month or so, we'd have to return and dig it up ourselves because no one would care. That didn't prove to be the case, though. You see, just 4 days after John and David hid the chest, someone managed to decode their poem and unearth the money. The intrepid hunter was a man named Cameron Brunt, who then shared a rather surprising message with the duo over social media. David wrote, "After Cameron found it, he called me on Facebook and told me the entire canyon was crawling with treasure hunters. The trailhead parking lot was full, the overflow parking along the street was full, and the church parking lot across the street was full. Everyone knew the treasure was hidden somewhere up that canyon." When we released the poem on social media, within 1 hour, there were already various groups of hunters within 100 feet of the chest's location, David continued. "We learned our lesson that first year and vowed never to underestimate this community again. So, that brings us to the summer of 2021. Following the success of the inaugural hunt, John and David decided to start another one. But as the latter just mentioned, they wanted to up their game this time around. With that in mind, after increasing the value of the chest's contents, the duo produced their latest poem. Let's take a look at it. The poem started with the following passage: "Begin your search where hikers rest, majestic slopes all facing west. Through the tunnel of emerald green, follow the river, creek or spring." Okay, then. It doesn't take much analysis to realize that this opening refers to the location of the start of the trek, along with the first set of directions. The next passage read, "When the blackbird clicks turn to port, if you reach the end you've come up short. Begin to climb when your path swings north, picking your way back and forth." Is that a literal blackbird? Or something more figurative? As for the clicks, that might be a reference to distance. Think about it, in the armed forces, a click describes 1 kilometer. So, David and John's poem seemed to be saying that if you covered that distance and went left, you might come to a dead end. For those who avoided it, though, a zigzagging uphill track awaited. The poem continued, "Soon you'll find you're not alone, greet the bear made out of stone. Along the bottom of the cliffs is key, the chest awaits beneath the tree." That's got to be the most important passage so far, wouldn't you say? It outlined the final steps before reaching the buried treasure. The bear might be referencing the shape of the surrounding rocks, while that last line seemed a bit more straightforward in comparison. As for the poem's conclusion, John and David wrote, "With treasure in hand, enjoy the views. The sun-kissed reds and salty blues." They certainly have a way with words. Anyway, how did people respond this time around? Well, a few days after the poem dropped on social media, David informed Fox News, "It's just blowing up." Yes, the pair believed that around 1,000 contestants were involved by late June 2021, all following the same cryptic hints. A real map was provided to narrow things down too. It was also noted that folks from places such as Georgia and Hawaii had traveled to Utah to take part as well. That's incredible. Yet it's got us thinking, why did the 2021 hunt become so popular? David had his own thoughts on that, which he shared during his chat with Fox News. There's a lot of people out there that just love a good treasure hunt, David told the station. It's kind of exciting. It's like one of the only things in all of our society that kind of transcends, political lines and everything. Everyone loves a treasure hunt. As for the hunt itself, David and John had a particular target in mind. Given how quickly Cameron had dug up the last chest, they ideally wanted the 2021 prize to remain unearthed until summer came to an end. Then again, the pair realized that was probably just wishful thinking on their part. David said, "I think that the response, and just the genius of the community, is way too powerful for that to happen. So we're hoping for at least maybe a couple weeks." On that note, it's time to reacquaint ourselves with the treasure hunter we spoke about earlier, Andy Swanger. Now, unlike those who'd traveled in from Georgia and Hawaii, Andy was a resident of Utah. He lived in Draper along with his beloved spouse and their 3 kids. And the dad took a keen interest in the treasure hunt on Independence Day. So could he prevail where hundreds of others had faltered? Andy and his partner began their search over that weekend, following the clues in John and David's poem. That's one way to celebrate the holiday, right? But it proved to be a time-consuming process as the couple roamed the area up until the evening. They were still empty-handed by that point. So, instead of pulling out some torches and continuing the search, the parents called it a day. Mind you, Andy strongly believed that they weren't far off from uncovering the chest. And he couldn't shake that notion for the rest of the evening, ahead of an important moment a few hours later. Speaking to Fox News in July 2021, Andy said, "I woke up yesterday morning and I just had a feeling like the chest was right there. It's got to be right there. So I just got up and went out." The right there he was referring to was a part of Big Cottonwood Canyon known as the Hughes Canyon Trail. Would Andy's hunch prove to be correct? Or did he get it all wrong? Well, as the dad previously noted, he wasted little time in getting back to the trail before reaching a spot several hours later that seemed promising. Thanks to the clues, he thought that the treasure was sitting below a dead tree. Eager to see if he was right, Andy started to dig. With every shovelful of dirt, the father of 3 got closer and closer to whatever was buried deep below, waiting to be found. Then, after putting in plenty of effort, he finally hit the top of John and David's chest. He'd done it. But what was sitting inside the box? Well, instead of a $5,000 prize, Andy had uncovered $10,000. Wow. And that wasn't all. Along with the money, a 10-ounce silver coin was packed into the box too, along with some additional goodies. That's a pretty impressive haul, wouldn't you agree? The treasure hunter certainly thought so. In fact, Andy was so taken aback by his success that it didn't really register with him straight away. We can hardly blame him. Still, after opening the chest on the trail, the family man was able to summon the composure to contact his wife. So how did she react to it all? Andy looked back on that moment while chatting to ABC4.com in July 2021. He recalled, "My wife wasn't with me. But when I told her, she got the kids in the car and met me at the trailhead with everybody." David and John turned up as well, ready to greet the man who'd bested their challenge. For David, one thing in particular stood out. As he told ABC4.com, it was just so fun to see the kids run to Andy once they spotted him with the chest. It was just so awesome. As for Andy himself, he admitted that skill didn't really come into it when locating the treasure. Andy admitted, "I'll be honest, I kind of lucked into finding the chest. There was a memorial plaque that had a picture of a pickaxe on it, and it would have led you right to it if you went up the hill right there. But I kind of came to it the back way. Hey, however he managed it, it still counts." And despite David and John's hopes for a prolonged search that lasted well into the summer, the former didn't mind too much when it eventually ended. You see, in the time leading up to Andy's breakthrough, the masterminds behind it all were being bombarded with thousands of messages from hunters. No, that isn't a typo. The hunt kind of got bigger than I anticipated, and it was kind of stressing me out, David revealed. So, I think it was a perfect ending. Hopefully, everyone that went out had fun and enjoyed getting outside and trying to solve the poem. But yeah, for me personally, I can't speak for John, but I'm kind of relieved it's over. Thank goodness it didn't last until the fall, then. David's inbox might have exploded. Anyway, there was one more detail that made the find even more special. As we already know, Andy's victory in the treasure hunt took place across Independence Day weekend. And considering his past, that was perfect timing. In a remarkable twist, Andy used to serve with the US Armed Forces. He's a bona fide veteran, so uncovering the money when he did must have felt extra sweet. You couldn't ask for a more fitting ending. Yet now we're left with another question. What did the Draper resident plan to do with the money? Well, Andy was looking to wipe out a few outstanding payments with part of it. As for the rest, he wanted to treat his family to something nice. The veteran told ABC4.com, "The kids really want to go to Disneyland, so that's kind of the plan." Sounds like fun. But guess what, folks? Andy wasn't the only person in Utah to benefit from a treasure hunt in 2021. Yes, David and John set another one up that October and raised the stakes again. Incredibly, the pair packed $20,000 into their latest chest. Bet you didn't see that coming. Just like in the summer, the search only lasted for a short period, culminating on Halloween. What is it with unearthing buried treasure on special dates in Utah? In this case, two men uncovered the money by a roadside. And as happy as that duo no doubt were, John and David took a different kind of pleasure from the hunts. As David told Fox News, "For us, the joy of it is watching families and friends and couples and everybody just get out into the mountains and discover new places and have a great time doing it. There's something fun about sitting back and just seeing, thousands of people try to solve your riddle as they wander the mountains."